Hi, Ray Dickey from South Carolina and Hudson Valley CAI, along with Association Help Now, covering a few different states here today. I think we got some great topics, but I think I say that every solitary time. But we're going to talk about deductibles and coverage and how you could save some money. We're going to talk about e-bikes. They are a problem. That's what Dawn told me, and I took her word for it, so I made it a topic. But they are actually a problem that a lot of HOAs don't know about. Sean and Cole are going to talk about ponds. We're going to talk about how they can be dangerous and how they can get messed up. So, and we're just going to go to the big items because there's probably like 1,000 ways that can probably. And then I left a lot of time for Q&A. So I hope there's questions because Dave and Corey love legal questions. They absolutely love it. And they get sad if they don't have any. Real quick, next week, make amenities work for you. I actually have somebody that just does this. They help associations of golf courses for with their amenities, how to market them. I think it's a really interesting topic. And then I also saw a LinkedIn post with this manager that did a great job when they had like an accident in front of their community. So him and his team. So I'm going to have him on. And then and that's only an hour. And then the same week, I'm going to do tough questions from the trenches. I'm going to scour the internet, scour my old questions, and I'm going to find the toughest things I can throw at our panel. And it'll mostly be legal and insurance. And we'll do some breaking HOA news if there is any. If you want a book, let me know. I'll send you the link when I send the follow-up email. I love giving out the book. There's hard copies, PDFs, and ebooks. And we're finally at the point where we introduce our panel. And let's go with who I see first, and that's Sean.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining in today. I'm Sean Fleming with the Lake Doctors. We service South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and portions of North Carolina. We're a lake pond management company, and we really try to be a resource for your association. So feel free to give us a call, and we could discuss ponds or anything else you want to discuss.
Personal advice, romance. Sean is good for anything. Feel free to call him.
Yep.
24 hours a day. 24 hours a day. Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Eggleston. I work with Hotwire Communications. My company specializes in fiber optics to community associations, and my role is a community relations manager, and I manage existing properties as well as get to know every single manager in North and South Carolina.
All right. Deb.
Good morning, everyone. This is Deb Girelli. I'm the Vice President of Girelli Insurance Agency. We're located here in Cold Spring, New York. We're an independent insurance agency servicing the tri-state area, so New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and I have my CERMS designation from CAI Nationals.
Okay. Whenever one or the other are on, you or Greg, I always get at least one question, and of course I did. Is Greg okay? Is Greg fine?
Greg is fine.
Okay, thank you.
He's taking a break today.
And then when you're not here, people ask where you are. And I don't know. The Girellis don't keep tabs on what they have going on. I wish they would, but they don't. Okay. Cole.
Yeah, I'm Cole Hewlin with Foster Lake and Pond Management. I am out of the Charlotte branch here in North Carolina. We also have branches throughout North Carolina, into South Carolina, and we just opened a branch in Florida.
Thanks for being here, Cole. I appreciate it. First time meeting you. Corey.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Kravitz. I'm the managing partner for Kovach Schifrin Nesbitt's Florida office. We're a national community association law firm with offices in Florida, Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin.
How do you like your new office, Corey?
I love it. Maybe next week, once I get the rest of the furniture in, I'll give you guys a tour of the rest of it.
Is there a couch in your office? Because sometimes I need a nap. Okay.
I was waiting for Amazon Prime Days to see if I can get a good deal on one.
Okay. Well, maybe someone in the audience has a used one they could drop off. I'll give them your address. Okay. Dave.
Just what you need, a used couch. That sounds alluring. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dave Byrne. I am the chairperson of my law firm's community association practice, and we represent HOAs, condominiums, and cooperatives in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania.
All right. And Dawn.
Hi, everybody. My name's Dawn Becker-Durnan. I, just like Deb, am also a CERMS, and I'm also on the South Carolina Board of Directors. I work primarily on the East Coast. However, Acrisure is an independent nationwide insurance brokerage, and our division specializes in community association insurance.
No, Dawn did not spend an hour with me on the phone. Remember that came up at the last live stream? Maybe it was the last one or the one before that. So you still owe me an hour phone call, Dawn, just to shoot the breeze. Okay. Dawn loves that because it's not like she's busy. Believe me, she's pretty busy. All right. Coverage that actually reduce premiums. We're talking about trying to save some money here. So I'm going to start off with a question. I only have 3 questions. And feel free to take us in any direction you need to take us in. And I'll start with Dawn. What deductible amounts are considered too high for an HOA? And this is a question that I got in regard to this session.
Well, it's always going to be dictated first and foremost by the governing documents. You're going to want to look to the insurance section, see if there's any monetary amount or percentage amount noted. But if you're in a condo or you're a project with Fannie Mae, or the federal lending requirements are going to apply to your loans, the maximum deductible that a community association can have is 5%. So if you're in a condo, especially a high rise, that can add up very quickly, especially if you have a per unit deductible. And it's going to be 5% of the entire project, not just one building. And that's important because we're finding that communities are winding up on the blacklist because of that.
Deb, is it true? I forgot to mention this in the beginning. I meant the higher the deductible, the more money you save. So Dawn just touched upon this, one reason, but is that a factual statement?
So yes, in general, that is a factual statement where as you increase your deductible, your premium should go down. It's actually going to depend on a lot of different factors. Insurance companies take into consideration your location, your claim history, and then how that deductible premium reduction is reflected in that. So, but yes, a higher deductible equals a lower premium.
And then Dave, I'm going to go to you at the very end and expect like a really important insurance question that's going to blow everybody away. Fascinating, honestly. If you can't come up with one, don't worry. But I'll stick with Deb, and then we'll go back to Dawn. So you touched upon it. Can adjusting deductible structure save money without leaving us underinsured? Like, who's going to figure that out, right? I want to save money. I want to raise my deductible, but how do I know I'm not going to underinsure myself?
So yeah, so when you're having conversations about increasing deductibles, you need to take into a lot of factors. One is your financials. If you're not financially stable and you increase your deductible to, let's say, $50,000, you got to be mindful that if a claim happens, you need to have that money in reserve to cover that deductible. So if you're not budgeting for it and keeping those things in mind when increasing your deductibles, you could have a serious situation when a claim arises.
Dawn, you don't need me to do sales for you and Deb, but this sounds like another reason to use someone who knows the HOA industry.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the other thing. I want to back up real quick. A deductible is subtracted from the amount of the loss that's paid by the carrier, right? So if the loss doesn't exceed the deductible, then the association is going to have to repair or replace on their own using their funds, as Deb pointed out, or they're going to have to assess their homeowners. And that can get into a tricky situation. I'm sure Dave's going to go into that in just a little bit. Deductibles, though, in my opinion, are a great tool for mitigating future claims or preventing them. It also can have sometimes, if you have situations, especially with certain homeowners that keep repeating offenses, it's a great way to stop it or nip it in the bud. But deductibles overall, when we look at them, especially with wind deductibles, as Deb pointed out, the finances of the association are important, but we also have to look at what's kind of going on in the marketplace. What's available? What's the capacity?
But like staying with the deductibles, Deb, it's so complicated. Like, why not just be tempted to go with the high deductible, right? So this sounds like, is this one of the toughest questions or toughest decisions a board may have to make? It sounds like to me it may be.
It is one of the tougher decisions boards have to make because there's a lot of different factors that need to be considered. But like Dawn said, we can do a per unit deductible, we can do a per occurrence deductible, we can do a percentage deductible. So there are different options, and depending on your specific situation for your community, those deductibles matter, right? If you're having water damage deductibles that are affecting multiple units, well, we're going to want to put a per unit water damage deductible, try to keep those premiums down, but also put some of that responsibility back on those unit owners that are causing these multi-unit water damage deductibles. So they're tools that are being used, and that's why you need to have conversations with your agents, tell them what's going on in your community, work with them, and see how you can reduce premium by using those deductible tools.
So Dave, go ahead,
Real
Dawn.
quick, I just want to add in, it's important that not only our boards are looking at insurance, but our homeowners need to look at their own insurance, especially if you're in a condo. There's potential, as I mentioned, for assessments. Well, there's loss assessment coverage that you can purchase additional limits for in these scenarios where you are assessed a deductible for, common area expense. So again, it's not just the master policy we're going to look at, but educate your homeowners. Put out in your newsletter, hey, homeowners, please check in with your broker and make sure you have adequate insurance as well. No one wants a blight on their neighborhood anyway.
Are you getting me off topic, Dawn? A little bit?
No, it's, that's a deductible expense that people, when Deb and I are talking to our clients and the board is saying, well, gee, we can't take on such a large deductible. Our homeowners don't have the ability to pay that. Well, the good news is if they have a proper homeowners policy or HO6 policy, they may not even have to dig into their pockets. And that's something that would then make you feel more comfortable, most likely, with taking that higher deductible.
Dave, I was going to go to you at the end, but I've already heard like two things. Okay. So both Deb and Dawn mentioned, and if I got it wrong, correct me right away, Deb and Dawn, that deductibles could be a way to kind of keep the community in tune of their insurance claims. Higher deductible, the community starts noticing, hey, community, you better straighten up because we've either got this person causing a lot of litigation or that person. You're not going to mention names. I picked up on that. Dawn and Deb, am I wrong? Because I never thought of that. That was very interesting. What do you think about that, Dave? Is that talk about like, this is a tough one for a board. How do they decide which deductible to go with?
It is a tough question. In some states, a condominium can pass along the deductible, or I guess sort of like Dawn I think suggested, it's really a shortfall in the insurance claim recovery. You can pass that along to the units that are affected, not units that are necessarily at fault, because insurance is not about fault, as some mistake boards make all the time. Insurance is about occurrence and coverage and damages. It's not about who's responsible for what. In fact, arguably, you get insurance for things for the purpose of not having to deal with fault. But the point I was making is that you can, in some states, you can pass along the shortfall, the deductible, to the units that are affected, meaning the ones that have suffered the damage, and therefore that minimizes the impact on the association as a whole. And if the community understands that, individuals can then get their own individual insurance. I believe Dawn and Deb can correct me if I'm wrong. To then you can get individual insurance to help cover your share of the deductible you have to pay, which then correct. I think filters down the overall shortfall to the individual HOA insurance companies, State Farm, whoever it may be, which hopefully will help alleviate the pressure on the community as a whole. But that takes a lot of education and insurance professionals that know what they're doing overall at the macro level.
Corey, if you're out there, why don't you jump back into, because I think I underestimated some of the legal aspects to all this. So I'd appreciate it if you're out there to jump back. Thank you, Corey. Sorry about that. I'll have you jump in here in a second. I want to make sure we hit everything because it's kind of a short segment. And remember, we're talking about ways to save money. That I don't want to get too much off on a tangent. The other thing is obviously coverage, right? You can either raise your deductible or you can lower your coverage. And I got two questions about that before the session. Lesser known policy types that offer better value for HOA claims. Once again, I'll start with you, Deb. this sounds like it makes a lot of sense to go to an HOA insurance representative compared to somebody that may not know about these different types of policy types. Is that accurate or not accurate?
Well, yes, you need to be utilizing somebody who specializes in this specific industry, because we do know the nuances between policies. Like we always talk about, Ray, one directors and officers policy is not the same as another directors and officers policy, right? You could be losing coverage by taking a cheaper policy because the agent or the board is not educated enough to know the differences between the two policies. So you definitely want to make sure you're comparing coverages, but also utilizing a professional that is specific to community associations.
Dawn, if you can't do it because I'm putting you on the spot, though, could you give me an example of maybe a lesser known policy that's advantageous?
Absolutely. So there's programs out there that are legal liability programs that are first dollar. For example, and I don't want to name the program per se by name, but one of the most prevalent ones, and they're a sponsor of CAI and they're national, they have a program that's for a couple dollars a month. You can purchase primary coverage for water, smoke, fire, some, not all the perils, but some of the perils. And what happens is they're paid directly. So it's almost like a deductible insurance policy. And then you don't have to use the master policy. I'm not explaining it exactly correctly, but the way that the concept is that you don't have to essentially touch your master insurance program, especially for smaller claims, because they're not going to give you a large amount. It's about $25,000 or less, but that's usually very helpful for a lot of HOAs and a lot of condos.
Deb, are boards, and maybe there is no average here, are boards tempted to underinsure and have too high of a deductible to save money? Or do you find that a lot of boards are actually wasting money on their insurance?
So what I've been finding lately, specifically with regard to the value to replace buildings, a lot of boards are trying to underinsure with those values just because those values have significantly increased over the last several years, which the value of your buildings going up is causing your premiums to go up. So in order to keep premiums down, boards are trying to keep those limits down as well, which could end up causing a problem in the long run if there is a claim and a total loss, if you're not 100% insured to value, which is also in violation of most offering plans, because the governing documents tell you that you need to insure to 100% replacement cost.
Corey, I've heard more than one horror story where I've heard this many times from other board members where boards have purposely not been honest with their insurance representative to save a buck. Can you talk about that a little bit and maybe discourage people from doing that and tell them why?
I mean, it could be a fraud, and it could lead to denial of a claim if you're not candid on your insurance application. And at least in Florida, I'm pretty sure all insurance applications are, when you sign them, you're signing them under the penalty of perjury. So this is not something to joke around about. You are a fiduciary of your company, which your company is the association. So you have a fiduciary duty to be honest and truthful, and it's not worth cutting corners.
You know, we have about 9 minutes left. You know, Dawn, some people in the audience are out there saying, "Oh, that's not true. Nobody would do that." For some reason, I think people think it's okay to cheat on their insurance application for some reason. Is that going to work out good for them? Because insurance companies are pretty good at not paying when they don't have to, right?
No, so a lot of insurance brokers like Deb and myself, because we're so finely tuned, we really understand or dialed in on the cost per square foot. So if we get a new client in, we're often able to tell really quickly if they're underinsured or underinsured based upon the geographic region, right? But a lot of boards, what I find more is that they won't increase the building limits. They're aware of it, but they say, it's fine. And we think that the market is up and down. So we're hoping that the market's going to drop. Now, we haven't seen that. And with all the geopolitical risk that's going on, the cost of materials absolutely has been increasing. And we've been watching that very closely. So it's more of getting the board to recognize that they need to have full replacement value. Now, I'm a broker, Deb's a broker. It's often difficult to say, well, you guys receive your commission based upon the amount of premium paid. And Deb said there's a direct correlation in your premium to your values. So how fair are you or impartial? How fair or impartial is the carrier? Well, that's where your professional engineer or your appraiser comes in to give you a determination of those replacement values. And a lot of our participating supporting sponsors here do those appraisals. And in Florida, as Corey referenced, there's a lot more legislation. Not all states require a replacement cost evaluation. So depending upon your state, you may have one. But if you have flood insurance, you definitely need one every 3 years.
Dave, I want to watch our timer because I want to make sure we have time, plenty of time for closing thoughts with Deb and Dawn. You're a board, and where's the line where you're underinsuring to save a buck and maybe it's not illegal or it's not going to be a problem, to where you're underinsuring and you kind of know that you are? Dawn just gave us an example of people hedging their bets, I think, with inflation and possible and future pricing down the road. That seems like a decision a board could make, or maybe not. Can you help me out there?
Well, it's really a tough situation. It's really case by case, but the safest play, at least in the states where I practice, the safest approach is to simply comply with the bylaws. The bylaws usually, in most associations, lay out the minimum requirements, what has to be insured, what amounts, how you value the insurance, how the deductible is applied if in the event of a shortfall, that kind of thing. Just do at least that. And because everybody's presumed to be on notice of that, other insurance companies, owners, etc. So do at least that. And if you want to, mess around with things like value and amount of insurance, you can amend your bylaws. That's to me the safest bottom line approach, to make sure that you're always in line with that. Everything else is then probably subject to debate, and you probably can't be hooked for a differing approach, unless, of course, you commit fraud. That's a whole different situation.
Okay. Corey, anything to add very quickly? Because I want to jump to Deb and Dawn to wrap up, and I have one more question for them also.
Yeah, I mean, if you own a single family home and you want to gamble with your own personal insurance, that's one thing. But again, if you have fiduciary responsibilities to all the people in your building, in a condo, or in your community, that's where you don't mess around. If something were to happen and you breach your fiduciary duty, they're going to come after you personally for that.
That's what I was kind of hoping Corey was going to say, Deb, and then I'll go to Dawn. I'm going to let you guys wrap us up out of this segment. And also, if you guys could also hit your closing thoughts about comparing policies, just some quick advice on that. Man, if I was a board member, I would care about my own butt, right? I'm going to make sure I'm going to do exactly what Corey said. It's not my home. I'm responsible. I got a fiduciary duty. I'm going to make sure that I have the proper insurance. I'm not going to try to save a few bucks for my fellow owners who are going to be the same ones that sue me if there's a problem. With that, go ahead, Deb, please.
Well, actually, I wanted to touch base on the application part, because I've been seeing that a lot more with boards turning over. And then boards are just signing applications, they're not reading them. So it's very important that those applications are reviewed every year for accuracy, because you might be switching a carrier, or a carrier might have a new application with new questions on it. So those applications really need to be taken seriously, and make sure that the information is accurate as best to your knowledge, because we don't want to run into that material misrepresentation situation that Corey was alluding to earlier. So I'll leave it to Dawn on that.
Yeah, Dawn, closing thoughts. And you have a little bit of time here.
Yeah, well, listen, we're in hurricane season right now, so we've been specializing in coastal insurance for a long time. New Jersey, New York, we always think about Superstorm Sandy, right? So a lot of our insurance carriers, they've got larger deductibles, especially for wind and hail. If your roofs have those inspections before wind season, which is June 1st to November 30th, have that guideline. But I want to say, when it comes to claims, I don't think Deb or I have ever had any of our clients say, "Oh, that was too much insurance." When they have a claim, the first thing they want to know is, do I have enough coverage? So really think about that, because that's what insurance is for, the sudden and the accidental. What you can insure, you must maintain, and that's what the reserve study is really beneficial for.
But we don't want to make people afraid, Dawn, to try to save a buck also, right? They should feel comfortable
Well,
working
listen,
with the, let me just,
Ray,
they, 1 second,
I
they
think
should,
the
let me,
whole point is
all right.
that their fiduciary duty, nowhere in the governing documents does it say that you have to save money, right? So when we look at insurance, though, and as you pointed out earlier, working with a professional, especially a CERMS insurance agent, a CCAL, attorney, a reserve specialist, all those individuals will help you reduce your costs. And if you work with professionals like Deb or I, that cost containment will come very quickly because we're going to give you strategies to help reduce those costs and reduce your claims exposure.
Dawn gets so excited, Deb, that I couldn't
I
finish
do.
I finished my question. She just, if you're at a party or something and you bring up insurance, oh my God, the whole room is
We are
spelled
fun
out.
at a party.
Okay, Deb, what I was saying was, I don't think boards or managers should be concerned about working with their professionals and looking at their coverage and premiums. I don't want people to feel like they have to overinsure. If they work with all their professionals, and you guys mentioned some that I never thought about, reserve studies, and they cross off all the T's and they work with their HOA insurance individuals, should they be concerned? Is there any reason not to try to save some money? They don't have to, but.
No, obviously they're also running a business, right? So any business wants to try and run a business as profitable or as best they can. So it's not bad to try to save some money, but you need to be mindful of ways in which you're doing that. We're not switching carriers or policies and totally not having the proper coverage in place just to save a couple $1,000s, because in the long run, that's going to hurt you even worse. So you need to work with your professionals. It's really about communication and education.
You know, Corey, and then we're going to wrap and go into the next segment, but I don't think the audience also believes all the time when I say the very same people that you're trying to save money are going to turn around and sue you. Because a lot of people live in these wonderful communities, but I think, does everyone on this panel agree that unfortunately that is the way the world works? The very same people, if you're a board member that you're trying to save a buck for, are going to be the very first ones to turn on you. Does anyone on the board, anyone on the panel disagree with me? Because I really don't think the
That's
audience.
totally true. Totally true.
Yeah. And there's people in the audience, they just don't believe it because they live in wonderful communities, and I hope it never happens. Okay, Corey, did you want to add anything to that really quick? Because I kind of was directed that at you, but do you agree or disagree?
No, absolutely agree 100%.
Okay. All right. Why don't we have you guys kind of stay for the next segment? And we have other sessions, audience, by the way, where we really dive deep into insurance. So, and you should see Dawn gets really excited. Her eyes just light up. It's unbelievable. Okay. E-bikes. I have a poll question I want to launch. Do typical HOA policies cover e-bike related incidents? So let me go to the poll here and launch this one because I don't know the answer. Do typical HOA policies cover e-bike related incidents? I don't know why we did one on just e-bikes, but I guess we'll find out in a second. And I'm watching it come in here. You guys could see it coming in too, right? From the panel. And I'm going to close it pretty quick. So if you have any comments, an e-bike is an electrical bike. I think that's a pretty good description of it. Any bike powered by electric or a battery. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. You know, audience, you did the same. I knew I wasn't going to put it out there. It depends, because I knew everybody would go for it, and it could be the right answer. But I would say it looks 50-50 between yes and no. Dawn, you sent me this topic. I didn't know it was a thing. Talk about the poll and tell me in the audience, why did you want to do this topic?
I love the fact that we're using it depends, right? Because that's what the answers that Deb and I usually have. Most likely, and this isn't going to be a depends answer. So that's the good news. Most of your insurance policies are going to cover those claims. Surprise. So when you've got that 12-year-old whizzing by at 60 miles an hour through your common areas and, you know, destroying the landscaping and running into grandma who's pushing the stroller, you may have a claim related to, you know, the use of it, the, you know, speeding, those type of things. So the enforcement we're definitely going to see some claims, but most insurance policies aren't going to have an exclusion. We've been hearing, however, that there may be some coming, not just for fires that can occur from the lithium ion batteries, and that's a whole other part to this, but really more to the use of it, especially on roadways.
Deb, I want to stick to the roadway issue. This is a thing because these e-bikes are becoming more and more popular. And I don't know if you want to touch upon it or not, Deb, but I learned, because I was curious, if somebody ran me over with their e-bike on the boardwalk, wow, I'm kind of like, I'm stuck in a way. I don't know. You want to talk a little bit about that? If somebody on an HOA property, HOA road, runs somebody over on an e-bike, let's even say it's a teenager under 18, no driver's license. Deb.
Right. So that's the difference, right? So with a car, we have insurance that follows the car. We have a licensed operator, but you still have a regular bike. Somebody can drive into you with a regular bike. It still can injure somebody. It's just that the e-bikes, they're a lot heavier. They can go a lot faster, so they can cause more damage, similar to what a car could do or a motorcycle. So yes, there's still liability issues, but if it's happening on common areas, and there's maybe not a rule enforced, or there is a rule in place by a community association that they're not enforcing. So it comes back to how the association is handling the use of e-bikes within the community. So it then turns into a lawyer thing, which I know we have two wonderful lawyers with us. But yeah, there are no specific exclusions currently in HOA policies that I'm aware of, but I have heard the same rumor Dawn has, that they might be coming.
So one of the points of this session is make a note maybe on your calendar to keep an idea on it, keep an eye on this. Maybe you're not using an insurance representative that is familiar with this industry and the latest trends, and you could find yourself in trouble down the road. I don't want to get sidetracked, Dawn. Are we talking about golf carts too, or is that save that for a different segment?
Yeah, we could add those in there. I think any type of motorized mobility device. You could have a scooter. My husband broke his arm on a one wheel, which is a one wheel, but it goes about 60 miles an hour, and people fly through streets and roads. There's electric bikes that look like motorcycles, but they're bicycles. So they're very fast. They're silent, so you don't hear them, especially if you're walking. So those kind of things, I think, when we're looking at for insurance perspectives, as Deb pointed out, it's going to come down to enforcement. That's really where we're going to want to see the HOAs and the compliance. What are they doing? What is their plan? Do they have rules and regulations? And if so, are they following it?
All right, Dave, why not just don't have any rules and regulations related to golf carts and e-bikes? Because it just sounds like you're setting yourself up for a problem.
If you any rule, one of my general sort of things is if you have a rule, it has to be enforced. People have a right to expect that it will be enforced. So boards shouldn't just adopt rules because it keeps noisy people quiet and complaining people quiet. If they have no intention of enforcing the rules, then they shouldn't adopt the rules. And rules have to be based on some actual data. Like you can't just ban something because somebody heard that it's dangerous, or something. There has to be some actual data or evidence to suggest it was a good decision. But the board really is foolish to adopt a rule that it has no intention of enforcing.
Corey, I can see these becoming rules in a heartbeat. Bobby keeps running around the neighborhood, driving around the neighborhood like a maniac, and everybody's complaining to the board. So the board at the next meeting says, hey, you can't ride your e-bike on the sidewalk. So you can't ride your e-bike from this time period to that time period. You can't have your e-bike on this road, but you can have it here. I could definitely see it happening, Corey. And what I'm kind of hearing from Dave and our insurance people is you better be careful if you make that rule.
Well, it's already happened. We have a community where, let me take a step back. In Florida, Florida law classifies e-bikes into different classifications. There's class 1, class 2, class 3, and it all depends if it's pedal assisted or the speed limit at which it goes. And some are street legal, some are not street legal. And so what we've done for our communities who've asked, especially for HOAs where the roads are private, we've basically mirrored the statutory language and restrictions that are in the statute as if the roads were public, and mirrored them for our communities so that they have the same rules or that the state would enforce outside of the community. And that's, and in terms of passing them through the community, it's easier to pass saying, hey, listen, we're just mirroring what Florida statutes say. And that's how we've been dealing with it down here.
So Dawn, if I'm hearing you right now, there doesn't seem to be a lot of exclusions for e-bikes and golf carts, but you're going to get in trouble if you had a rule maybe and you didn't follow the rule. That's not going to necessarily affect your insurance coverage, is it?
Absolutely. But I also want to just go back real quick to Corey. So glad that he brought up certain state laws and also motor vehicle laws that may apply. New Jersey also does a class system very similar to that. Some states don't even have that. So South Carolina has some rules about operating a golf cart and where you can do it and what time, but some very liberal. Now, just as far as the enforcement and the insurance coverage, we're looking at a directors and officers liability claim as far as enforcement actions, but we could also have a general liability claim if they're alleging that there has been injuries to other parties or property damage to other parties because they failed to stop that 12-year-old gang of scooters from marauding the neighborhood.
Well, what duty does an HOA have to keep some dude from driving fast on a golf cart? I mean, unless you create a duty on yourself, I mean, do you have a duty to make people run slow?
All right.
Like
You're
not jump rope fast? I don't know what duty we have for this.
All right. Hang loose, because that's going to get us totally sidetracked. That seems like a legal question, even more than an insurance question. But you know what, Dave? Somebody did ask the same thing.
Dawn and Deb can handle them just like Corey and I can. I believe in them.
Okay. Well, somebody from the audience said, it's a tough rule to enforce. We don't know if the resident riding the e-bike or we can even catch them. And then other people are saying, what about if they're not our owners? Because you're always talking about how we can't enforce rules on non-owners. Well, you kind of if it's a visitor and you know who the owner is. Boy, there's a lot here, Deb. Dumping it all on you. And we got about 5 minutes, so put it together with closing thoughts.
Okay, so closing thoughts. Obviously, these are newer technologies going on. That's why we haven't seen the exclusions yet. And so we're waiting to see, because again, insurance is kind of a wait and see situation where we want to start seeing what's happening and how these claims are playing out. And then they'll decide if they're going to exclude or not exclude. The insurance companies, though, are very concerned about the fire we always talk about with the lithium ion batteries. And some insurance companies are requiring that associations have rules in place for where these vehicles, so these e-bikes or these things with these lithium ion batteries are stored, because if they're not stored properly, they can cause fires. So we are starting to see some literature come out from insurance companies with regard to that they're asking community associations to adhere to. So kind of going back to Dave's point, they are kind of being forced a little bit to address the e-bikes and storage wise, but maybe not usage. So you can see it coming down the road that usage might start being addressed. So that's my closing thoughts.
Okay. So we have a video where we talk about it's going to be a whole insurance issue with these bikes. And actually there's already condominiums throwing them out. It's already happening. So that's another topic. So I don't want to get sidetracked on that, but that is happening right now. There are condominiums saying no more e-bikes, and people literally have to get rid of their e-bikes because of the fire issues. And we'll talk about that another time. Corey, anything quickly to add, because I'm going to dump Dave's question on Dawn to wrap us up, because I don't think it is an insurance question, but we'll see. Dave's obviously knows more, like a million times more than I would ever know. Corey.
I mean, and it's not even HOAs and condos making people get rid of their e-bikes. My wife's making me get rid of mine. I won it at a charity auction and drove it through the casino at the Guitar Hotel, the Hard Rock, and she was mortified. And so now it just sits in the garage. And if anyone wants it, just let me know.
Yeah, I didn't want to take time, but I was going to ask Dawn to tell the audience how old her husband was when he was on that one wheel. That just not sound right either.
Old enough to know better.
Yeah, I meant like I'm not riding around on electric, scooters for a reason. Okay, Dawn. Dave asked and Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong. If there's an insurance role and a duty to Dave, phrase it quickly for me.
No,
Rephrase the
yeah.
question.
Basically, people get insurance, and entities get insurance for insurable interests, things that they are liable for. I don't have insurance for the building down the street because if it burns down, I don't have to pay for it. But I have insurance for my house. So, do we have insurance for people for injuries caused by lunatics driving golf carts really fast? Do we have insurance for that? Because what exposure, what duty do we have to prevent that, to care for that, to prevent that,
All right, Dawn, you have 2 minutes. And it seems like
Okay.
a really hard
It's
question.
a little complicated because you could bring into it motor vehicle laws, right? And I know it sounds funny, but a lot of our insurance policies actually address motor vehicle laws. And if the vehicle, whatever it may be, is subject to those motor vehicle laws, a certain policy may apply. So for general liability, perhaps we could have it under a hired and unowned auto exposure. That's where we could pick it up. But, ultimately, Dave, I think the bigger issue is that associations are just concerned of the what if, because you can be sued for anything at any time. So I think when you have especially a child who's injured and they say that there was a bump in the road and the sidewalk wasn't maintained, that's what the association boards are really more nervous about.
Well, we have a duty to maintain the sidewalk, so that would be okay.
Yeah, definitely, and we see that often, or we find even the complaints about the complainers, meaning that we know we have a Karen who's always going to complain about everything, but sometimes certain residents get fed up, right? And now they sue to make the complainer stop because they're wreaking havoc. But, ultimately, I think with these type of things, we're going to probably look to more jurisdictional law and what the state law and motor vehicle type law. I think that's where the direction is that we're going.
All right, we are moving fast today. Dave, we have to have a session and have Corey and have Dawn and Deb. I complimented Dave Byrne. One thing that's so interesting about Dave Byrne, he asks the best questions. He does. If you just kind of let him loose and just let him range, he comes up with like questions and concepts and ideas that I love so much, and we never have time to cover them. I'm going to dedicate just a session because sometimes I'll talk to Dave, just casually, and it's fascinating. And we'll invite Corey. So we'll do that as a session one time because I think Dave's questions he asks is just fantastic.
Thought-provoking.
He's emotionless, but on camera, but still thought-provoking. Okay, Tom Ingblom, if you could jump back on. I know we're going to take a quick break here, really quick. Everyone could kind of just stay for a second. Tom, your camera position is horrible. Oh, there we go. All right. And Tom's like a good friend of mine, so that's why I always kind of tend to pick on him. And Tom picks on me all day, audience. He calls me all day and picks on me. All right, now I need silence. It is time for Dr. Tom's words of wisdom. 2 minutes. We're not calling him 2-Minute Tom because we already don't like that nickname. Tom, you're a PhD. It's related to this industry. You've been a manager. You've been everything. What are your 2 minutes words of wisdom for today?
Well, thank you for having me, even though you pick on me quite a bit. So I appreciate that. But words of wisdom is silence isn't golden for the board because people aren't showing up and you're not having conversations. That doesn't make it right. You have to plan. You have to use your experts that are on here. You have to follow the reserve study. You're in Florida, they have what they call the Surge Structural Integrity Reserve Study. You have to have a game plan. You can't sit there idle. We're not going to do anything. You got to get into the dynamics of the budget, project, look at the future, what the insurance is going to be. Have we had claims? How can we prevent liability? Silence is not golden. You have to discuss and plan and have committees to deal with this all the time.
But then we're also going to tell people we want really short board meetings. So I think what
Right.
you're, I think what you're saying, Tom, is everybody, if you're a board and you're not having a conversation back and forth at your meeting to a certain extent, you're not doing your job. Is
Correct.
that
I mean, how many boards always say, well, no one shows up. They don't show up to my board meeting. Well, you know what? Tell them you're going to have a special assessment. See how many people show up then. And then you can have open dialogue. And never kick the can down the road. That's what they do. Well, everything is fine. We don't need to raise assessments. You have to raise assessments. You have to listen to Dawn. You have to listen to Dave, Corey, Deborah. All these are important factors. You should have a business partner come in quarterly and give it directions, suggestions, and come up with ideas to be proactive for your association.
you didn't mention me? You left me out.
Well, you're part of the equation. You know, you
I'm
have so
only
much
kidding.
to offer.
All right. Corey, I always recommend that, like, and people, a lot of people don't agree with me. Manager, if you're running the meeting, really the president should run it, but I guess managers end up running it a lot of times. I think you should go around the room and ask everybody their opinion, because some people, I noticed with the CI boards that I'm part of, some people are just quiet. You know, we had this nice retired school teacher. Deb's kind of familiar with her, and she just wasn't going to be forceful enough at the meetings to speak up. So we would always make an effort to ask her what she thought. You agree with that, Corey, or you don't agree with it?
I mean, you're a volunteer on the board, and part of being a leader is to not only do a succession path. You know, that's one of the greatest qualities of leadership, is to have someone succeed. You know, your term in office, to carry the association forward, and not collapse when you leave. So if you can solicit the assets of your community, and the knowledge of your community, just by asking a simple question, I think it's good. It can backfire. You might not get what you want to hear, or get something useful, but in the end, I don't see any problem with it. And ultimately, people would like to be heard.
I guess for me, Dave, it's kind of personal because, like, the school teacher, Deb, you know who I'm talking about, called me and, like, thanked me because she's just not going to speak up. She's just not. People get excited, they start talking. Do you agree with me, or I think you disagree with me this on, Dave? Right? You're just kind of like, let the meetings run the way they want to run, and people want to talk, they can talk, and if they don't, they shouldn't have run for the board.
Well, I look at it, I mean, if you're asking as sort of legal counsel to an association, I take a more conservative, limited approach, which is these are political questions. How people, board members deal with each other, how they speak to their members. These are all things that are political questions. They're about the community. They're not legal questions. If I'm being asked, what have you seen over 35 years that has been useful to your clients? That's a different question. But if I'm being asked as a lawyer, I don't have an opinion on how many times you ask the lady down at the end of the table what her opinion is. It's not my concern.
Very quickly, I'm asking you with your 35 years of experience, not legal commentary.
Then my answer would be it's usually best to involve as many people as you can, and be kind and be inclusive. I mean, that's just a general human type of approach to things. That's generally the most productive way to solve a problem, I would think.
Okay,
That's been my
most of the audience
experience.
is absolutely agreeing. Tom, good one. Any closing comments? Thought provoking.
Listen to Ray, attend the seminars, the experts, everything will be great. You got a great resources, and everything will be fine. And don't take it personal. That's the bottom line. Too many managers take it personal.
All right. And I appreciate you, Tom. You know that. So, all right.
It checks in the mail, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's have our two pond guys jump on, and then I'm going to have everybody else kind of jump off. But insurance and legal, listen, we're definitely going to have you guys jump back on for this, but I'm going to try to kind of stick to what we're here for, because we could spend 2 hours just on pond problems. And we're going to do I think Hotwire's doing a giveaway or something after this segment. All right, I call it pond problems. And I broke it into two pieces, and I'm going to let you guys kind of run with it. But let's make sure we break it up here a little bit and give time for the audience to ask some questions. I broke it into hurt residents, way residents could get hurt or people could get hurt, and how things can get messed up. Sean, I don't think you're going to be able to hit let's start with the way people can get hurt. Are ponds, boy, this is a roundabout question. Are ponds dangerous?
And this is a passionate question for me, and the answer is absolutely yes. Stormwater ponds are incredibly dangerous. The ones in a community, and even just this last weekend, I saw people staging jump areas, sliding bounce castles next to a pond, or trampolining into a stormwater pond. These are incredibly dangerous activities to put around this waterway, mainly because of all the unknowns that are in them. You have chemicals from the road, you have oils, greases, you have dangerous animals such as alligators, snakes in the waterway. You have unusual topographies in the waterways. You have clays, which can make it really, really difficult to get out of a stormwater pond if you're climbing into them. Even for people who are very experienced and great swimmers, it could be really dangerous. You could have all sorts of different components and utilities in and around that system that can hurt people. Trees, tree limbs. And yeah, of course, the Muscovy ducks that you alluded to earlier, they're just the worst.
Yeah.
They'll eat people whole. I've seen it. It's brutal.
Don't bring your issue up with the ducks up during the live stream. Okay, that's between you and those ducks. Sean's a wildlife lover, but for some reason he hates these ducks for some reason. Cole, I want to say something, and the lawyers are gonna, don't listen to me, audience, but I'm gonna say it anyway. How would you like to be a board member of your association and a child drowns in your pond or detention basin, and you drove by every day, forget the legalities of it, and you never took the time to talk to your pond professional about the safety of that pond? Cole, can you run with that?
Yeah, that's something that nobody wants to hear about. As a matter of fact, there was a case that we did hear about before. A handicapped individual did accidentally roll into the pond, and it is something that is an issue. And actually, the way that they're being built now is to reduce those drowning issues, those drowning occurrences, with littoral shelves and other ways of protecting the pond itself from people getting in easily. Fencing, the plantings around the edges, and then the slopes are supposed to be a lot less of a grade than they were at one time.
Cole, is part of a pond professional's job, it's safety also, right? That you look at the pond and you'll notify the board or manager if you see an issue that it's not safe. This should be something that board should be asking about, and maybe our lawyers will tell you not to, so you pay attention, audience, to what they say. But Cole, I just want to I want to press upon this fact, because like I said, a lot of times the people that drown aren't people in wheelchairs, right, Cole? They're kids.
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. And what we want to make sure is we check, as a stormwater individual, the professional, is to make sure that it's functioning properly. Any issues with the surrounding functionality, inlets, outlets, orifices, if they're not functioning properly, it can be catastrophic for the HOA itself.
And Sean, it looks fine on the surface, but people even get electrocuted. And I'm not trying to scare people with ponds, but I don't think you should be jumping in a body of water you're not familiar with, because people get electrocuted in these things, but people are doing it all the time. And I even forgot about all the chemicals. But Sean, just kind of like before we go and how these ponds get messed up, just maybe like push the safety factor, because if we could like prevent one horrible thing from happening out there today, that would be awesome.
Yeah. And it's sometimes not really apparent. Oftentimes me and Cole, with our companies, we're hired to make everything look pretty. And then you look at it and everything looks great. You got the beneficial plants, all these other things. But sometimes it's even just the temperature itself. Right now, we are dealing with almost boiling temperatures in the waterway. These ponds are more of a tropical environment now. So you're dealing with all sorts of very dangerous bacteria, and it could even hurt your dogs. So you got to be really careful in regards to it, and show caution, because yeah, even though you're trying to make this a beautiful aesthetic for the neighborhood, there are a lot of dangers, especially in the heat of summer, and that's why this is a good topic.
And then I'm going to go to a couple audience questions here. But Sean, just to be clear, you and I have had long conversations about your safety as a pond professional. It's a dangerous job. Would you agree?
Yeah, we do really well in regards to safety in the industry. Me and Cole are part of an organization, Society of Lake Management Professionals. We work together as an industry to look out for each other and help out. But we have horror stories within our industry of people in our industry that are qualified swimmers, been around ponds their entire life, and we get in precarious situations too. So we really try to push safety.
Cole, I got this from the audience. We had a tragedy with a pond management employee who was treating a pond embankment with a motorized vehicle, which flipped over into the pond and trapped him. He drowned before anyone could get to him. I'm not trying to, man, I always feel like I'm scaring people during these live streams, but ponds are dangerous.
Going back to the slopes of these ponds. They can be extremely steep, and if you're not comfortable with the equipment that you're using, that is not something that we do on a regular basis. Those machines are not made for some of the slopes that they can have on around ponds. So it is a dangerous part of the job. If you're doing that kind of treatment, we do typically try to use boats and have life vest on with most of our companies.
All right, and I want to jump off the safety, but I got to get to this because like 3 people asked me about it. Sean, you're not really worried about, I meant alligators. You obviously keep an eye out. You guys are more concerned, I think Sean says, with snakes and things like that, but I don't want to get off on a side topic, Cole, but alligators, after, want to touch base on that a little bit. What's the rule of thumb on them?
Just stay away. I mean, you don't bother it, it won't bother you. I'm from Florida. I've been around them all my life. The only time that they get really aggressive is during mating season and nesting season. So you want to be careful around ponds because of the snakes and the alligators that are around. So you just stay away. No big deal. They don't bother you. You don't bother them.
And then Sean, before we jump ahead, I think you did tell me you're not worried about alligators. It was snakes, right?
Snakes, but lately it's been bacteria. Bacteria is, I think, one of the ones. Those geese that Cole was talking about, E. coli levels could get elevated, especially at high temperatures. So you could have some unusual bacteria, and you don't see that. You don't see it like an alligator in the pond or a snake crawling around the shoreline. That's a hidden danger.
And then lawyers and insurance people, I weren't going to have you in on this one, but now I have to. So why don't you jump back in here? Cole, let's talk about these ponds can get messed up in a heartbeat, and they can cost you a fortune. Am I right or wrong? And give me an example if I'm right.
100%. Think about the hurricanes that came through and just wiped out everything, including stormwater devices. A dam replacement can be up, 6 figures easily. Those are the things that they have to be properly armored in certain places, and you want to make sure that everything is functioning properly for when these heavy rains come through. You'll have at least a little bit less of a chance of major problems occurring. But water flows very quickly, especially through concrete pipes, so it can happen within one rainfall.
And Dave, come back if you can. Sean, one of the things, a lot of the pond problems that we talked about in other live streams, they've been so easily correctable. Like people just don't take the garbage out of them or to have the pond guy come by enough to check on it. It seems like, am I wrong? It's like 80% preventable for these problems that are going to cost thousands of dollars. And then if you get the EPA involved, you're basically done for. Can you take it and make it make sense?
Yeah, and that's why it's an important thing to also think of this time of year when you're talking about budgets and issues, that you come up with a plan. Even small plans to address these things, it can really help address these costs in the long term. Not only your capital, but your reserves, which was also discussed in this webinar. Having a good reserve plan will eliminate a lot of that fear that you have about those large expenses such as dam failures, stormwater, bringing in engineer groups, talking to your pond professional, picking out your problem areas ahead of time and monitoring them save so much money in the long term.
Cole, I'm putting you on the spot, so if you can't answer, don't worry about it. What is the most common item that really screws a pond up where it costs a lot of money to fix it that was just so easily preventable?
The orifice being clogged by trash or algae, just the normal, junk that can end up in a pond from a rainfall is going to stop the pond from flowing properly, and then that's going to create, higher pond levels and a lot of issues around that.
And that becomes an expensive problem to fix. I'll go to Sean on that.
Oh yeah, one simple tree I saw completely destroyed a concrete weir they had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to repair, and it was just one tree.
All right, Deb, insurance, ponds, sounds like a nightmare. I bet if you were in the insurance business and you weren't getting premiums for ponds, not you, I mean the big companies, they would love to get rid of ponds. If they could pick one item in the top 10, I bet it would be ponds.
So yes, there's supplemental applications that have to be completed for ponds, lakes, dams. We need to know that you're maintaining them. We need to know how deep the water is. We need to know if you're allowing swimming or not. There's so many questions that go into any body of water that you might have and that you're responsible for. Obviously, the main concern is going to be drowning. And then also you want to be worried about flooding. Is that water going to rise enough to cause damage to buildings?
Don't get me distracted on floods, Dawn, because I know that I'm sorry. Look how disappointed she is. Tell me, go to ponds.
You ruin it for me all the time.
I just learned something though. I just learned, 1 second. I just learned from Deb. I never knew this. You guys want to know how deep the ponds are and all that. I wasn't aware of that. I don't know if you want to touch upon that too, Dawn. Like you guys dive pretty deep into what's going on with these ponds.
Gosh. We look at maps, we look at the GIS system, we look at the floodplain management, we look to see whether the community participates in it. But, Cole and Sean, their expertise is really dramatic. I don't think people understand that there's chemical applications. As Sean and Cole were talking about the algae blooms and bacteria, but they're involved not only in making sure the plants are correct and that ecosystem is working, but all the other aspects. Now, for water exposures, we also look at what kind of chemicals are being applied, what contractors are working there. But when it comes to the water, I look at the dams. I want to know about your emergency action planning, what cost the dam is, when has it been serviced, is it earthen dam, all of those things, because Sean and Cole can tell you that those are so expensive. And when you have a dam failure, not only is the cost to fix it, but, as you know, loss of property and life could occur too.
Deb, are the chemical aspects of ponds covered? Someone from the audience is asking. I guess they're talking about if someone does a lawsuit for exposure. People sue for anything, right? Let's just assume that's what they're referring to. Is that going to be covered?
So what we always say, it depends, but there are specific policies associations can buy. There are environmental impairment liability policies that have to do with when there's some sort of a pollution situation and where the DEC gets involved and there's you gotta fix it. But there are different policies. There's different ways to look about it. I mean, and yes, there could be potential liability issues if somebody says they got sick because of something having to do with the chemicals being used on the property, whether it be on a pond or just for the landscaping.
I don't know who would jump in a pond with all the chemicals. You'd have to be crazy.
And, I do want to say one thing else. We have to be careful when we're going on the water. So if you're in the water, your insurance may not respond. So please trust the professionals like Sean and Cole, because they spend a lot on their insurance to make sure that their over the water operations are covered. So if you're a board member and you're taking out a boat and you're going to go and check the weir, or you're going to check some component of that lake system, you really should check in first with your insurance agent, because you may not have coverage for that. So again, Sean and Cole, that's who you're going to want to talk to about under the water and over the water.
How come you never told me that, Dawn? After all the years, that's another thing. That would have been a great, when we do that, what managers and boards should never do. That would have been perfect. I never knew that. Don't go out on a boat with the vendor.
I've got more. Trust me. Deb
All
and I
right.
could go for days on what people shouldn't do.
And people would love to be there for days. We'll do a marathon, 24-hour Deb and Dawn marathon. Okay. Great questions from the audience. I will start with the first one with Corey, and then I'm going to save one for Dave. Corey, would a fence, and then I'm going to do closing thoughts with Sean and Cole, just so you guys know. Would a fence around the pond be beneficial? Why do so few HOAs have fences? Corey, is this a question for you, or is it not a legal question?
Well, I mean, it depends on the governing documents. Some governing documents don't allow fences. Some do. Some regulate the type of fences. Some don't want the view of we don't really call them ponds down here in Florida. We call them lakes. But a lot of times you don't want the lake view obstructed by a fence or a hedge or anything like that. So it depends on the community.
Dave, let me guess. See if I've learned anything. Don't put a fence up if you can't maintain it properly.
Well, that's definitely the case. I don't know. I don't know what the law is like, for instance, in New Jersey, as to whether or not you're more or less liable if you have a fence. I'd have to research that, or just tell a client that's why you have insurance. Doesn't matter either way. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Great question. Sticking with Dave, if the governing documents state that the lake owners can swim in the lake, does the HOA have to insure, or would it be the homeowner's responsibility to insure? So the governing documents state that the lake owners can swim in the lake, Dave. Does the HOA have to worry about insuring it, or can they just dump all their responsibility on the homeowner?
So this hypothetical is basically a lake, like equivalent to a pool.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like let's say it has an approved swim area. I don't know.
Well, then it wouldn't be treated. I mean, I can't imagine it'd be treated any differently than a pool would be, which means the HOA would have insurance. Should have insurance for it.
Really quickly, Corey, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of HOAs, if they do have lakes, they will have no swimming or no boating restrictions because they're probably not insured. Some that do allow kayaking or electric boating or something like that probably are insured.
Sorry, Corey. In like in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, we tend to see communities that involve lakes to be there's like special associations, like lake associations, so they're set up with specific sort of understandings about what owners can do, what they can sue for, what they're obligated to do, what the HOA is obligated to do. It's a very separate dynamic. In a place like Florida, it might be more of a normal thing because perhaps most associations are developed with that kind of thing in mind, given the kind of state Florida is. But here, it's an anomaly. It's set up differently usually if you have that.
I don't want to run out of time because I want to make sure Sean and Cole have closing thoughts, but like people are even asking, like, swim at your own risk. That varies from state to state, I believe, on the approach. Anybody on the panel disagree? Because states look at these things differently when you end up in court. Okay, so I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to like touch upon that. We've done entire segments. I'll do a segment on it actually about what you can dump on owners and residents on their own. Dawn, anything to add really quickly, leaving time for Cole and Sean here?
I touched on this before, but contracts, when you're working with a company that, with individuals such as Sean and Cole, their parameters of their company are going to be a little bit different, meaning they're going to have, as we talked about, the insurance, but their professionalism. So contracts, when we're looking at them, read the fine print, look at your sections. What is the contractor, what is the pond company responsible for, what are they not responsible for? So I think that from a legal aspect is always a big deal, is just looking at contracts no matter who it is.
Deb, if I was on a board, why wouldn't I just buy insurance for the lake anyway? Is it that expensive even if I didn't need it? You can buy insurance for things that maybe you need or don't need, or am I just completely off base here?
Well, it's what you're responsible for. It goes back to the whole duty thing that Dave brings up. Like, what is your duties? What is your fiduciary duty? Who's responsible for what? yes, we can insure lakes, but a lot, like Dave said, here in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, a lot of times the insurance companies don't allow swimming. They don't want you boating with an electric or anything with a motor. So there are certain rules. So insurance companies can say, no, we're not going to cover that risk. So therefore, it causes a problem for the association where they might have to go to a different carrier or pay more money because they want to be allowing swimming to happen.
Okay. And then Corey and Dave, if you don't mind, if you remember, I wouldn't mind asking you guys about some more about the at-risk issue during the Q&A. And then also, I want to ask you guys, if an association takes insurance that they may not need just to cover themselves, are they making themselves liable then? Is there a negative to that? I don't want to forget. Okay, closing thoughts, Cole. You know, take a minute here, a minute and a half, and we talked about pond safety and how they can get messed up. I know we didn't cover everything.
Yeah, I mean, proper maintenance of any of these stormwater devices is highly mandatory. It will help the long run of the pond to last longer and catch those problems faster before they become more expensive.
Sean.
Mm-hmm. Education and awareness. It's one of your features of your community. You need to talk about it. Make everyone aware of the great things. Once you have, the better off everyone's going to be.
Okay, and I have to ask because 3 people asked me, have you ever been bitten by anything, Cole?
Yes.
Okay, what were you bit by?
A turtle.
A big snapping turtle?
It happens.
All right, very quickly, tell us a story. A big guy like you and Sean are 2 big guys, powerful guys. A turtle took you down. Tell me what happened with the turtle.
Hey, did they just get to you? Walking in the water, you tend to step on things, and snapping turtle happened to be right there underneath my boot. So it'll happen to anybody.
He bit you through the boot?
No, it didn't go through. It was just one of those things that you get bit by. It does not happen very often. I've been around ponds all my life, and you're bound to run into something.
Audience, these pond guys, they love their job. I should have become a pond guy. I haven't met a pond guy yet, or a pond woman. I'm sorry. Just so happens most of the people I've been in this industry have been men for some reason. Sean, have you ever been bit by anything?
No, I've been able to avoid that, mostly bugs. But everything else has been pretty good. The closest animal interaction that I had was a swan took a boat from me and was captaining the boat for a little while. Came straight at it as I was on the water. So yeah, you gotta. Those things get big once they're out of the water.
Sean, you are like 10 feet tall. People can't tell during the live streams. I can't.
Hey, I've seen Jurassic Park. You don't mess with those things.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Cole. Thanks, Sean. Your contact. Everyone else, stay. Guys, stay for the poll. Stay for the poll. Let's take another quick break here before we go to the Q&A. Or I'm just going to actually ask for also industry news from everyone. Jennifer. All right. Yes, I did upgrade my graphic. There's Jennifer in her car because we know she's always in her car. And I put a fiber optic cable. I don't really know if it's a fiber optic cable. I'm limited on the artwork that I can get, audience. I'm sorry. All right, Jennifer, you are here to do a giveaway, correct?
Yes, I am.
All right, introduce yourself very quickly one more time, just in case people just happen to tune in.
Okay, I'm Jennifer Eggleston with Hotwire Communications. We provide fiber to the home internet services for community associations, and I am the regional community relations manager for North and South Carolina.
Okay, I hate the way the new system does the polls, but the question I'm going to ask the audience is, what percentage of residents have recognized you at the store? I'm talking about managers. What percentage of residents have recognized you at the store? And you're going to pick somebody, let's see, we had 71 people register. I don't know, it doesn't matter. Pick a number 1 through 71.
Okay.
All right, you could tell me it.
35.
All right, I'm not even going to look who it is. Okay, 35. So just trust me. If you're number 35 on our registration list, I will have Jennifer get in touch with you. Jennifer has to guess the answer right though before we'll let her send you a prize. We won't let her. We'll forbid it. Okay. And she's going to get help from the panel. So the poll question is, and I kind of like, I have to poll the audience first. So it's going to have to be on the honor system, Jennifer. Jennifer, why don't you write down your system? You write down your answer or just be on the honor system. Don't give me the answer because the audience will react to it, but it's going to be what percentage of residents recognize you at the store? 75%, 50%, 25%, or less than 20%. Are you ready, Jennifer? Do you have your answer in your head? Okay. I'm going to launch the poll. And as the poll is running, very quickly, panel, we know Dave Byrne's going to hold us up, but that's fine. Sean Fleming, how do you think the audience is going to answer? Can't hear you.
I would go with 50%, pretty even.
Okay. Deb.
I was going to go with 50%.
All right. If anybody else is there, by the way, in the background, lawyers jump on. Cole.
25 to 50.
Less. Okay. Corey.
Say 0 to 20%.
0 to 20. Tom. Can't hear you. You're muted.
75.
Wow. Tom went sky high on that. Dawn.
I'm going to say the 50%.
Okay. Chris, did you hear the question?
I did.
What do you think?
I'm going to say she's very popular. I'm going to say 25 to 50%.
Okay. Well, wasn't her in particular, but managers in general. How often are they recognized in the store? Sean.
I'm going to go 40%.
Okay. Dave Byrne has just gotten so tired of me making fun of him with the poll questions that he's just jumped off on the poll question, I think. All right. So your job, Jennifer, is I'm going to end the poll. Oh, Dave, what do you think?
What are my choices? I'd have to go really far back.
What? I don't know what you're talking.
I would let Sean. I would let Sean vote for me if I were you.
What percentage of residents? How many managers are recognized at the store by residents? What percentage?
Oh, I would say less than 5%.
Wow, less than 5%. Okay. Any managers? Okay, I'm going to end the poll. And Jennifer, for you to win a prize for number 35, whoever that person is, what was your answer? Because the audience said by far they're not that easily recognizable. It was 20% or less.
Well, my answer was 50%.
We're gonna give a prize anyway, though, right? We're not really.
Okay.
I think everybody knows. I don't know if you know that, Jennifer. You're kind of new, but we always say we're not going to give a prize, but we're never really not going to give a prize. So
always give a prize for sure.
Yeah. So let me share the results. 75 to 100%, 14%, 32% for 50, 14%, and then 39%. So I thought managers would be more recognizable. I'm a board member and our local Hotwire rep recognized me at the store only having met once before. Oh, was it Jennifer? You can get back to me on that. Jennifer, does that ring a bell? Are you recognizing people at the store?
My HOA manager, no, I wouldn't recognize her.
Really? Okay, I recognize my manager. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer from Hotwire. I will put you in touch with who you need to get in touch with. Tom, I'll probably talk to you later just because I love talking to you. Thanks for being here. Where are you going to be, Tom? What's your next stop? You're always on the road speaking. Do you know?
Phoenix next week, and then Orlando.
Phoenix next week, and then Orlando. Okay. And you do a lot. Tom does a lot of speaking. If you need a CMCA course, his approval rating is like sky high. You should definitely take advantage of that. I will send you the information. Thanks so much, Tom. And we're going to jump into Q&A and backtrack here a little bit. Thanks again to Jennifer. It's pretty self-explanatory. Everyone has a question feature, just in case you're just tuning in. Use your question feature if I close the poll. I absolutely love questions. Please send them to me. I love comments about anything. I don't care. I'm just happy if you send me anything. I don't use people's names, so feel free to ask away. Cole, we're not going to have any pond questions. I'm sorry. I guarantee. Now watch. Somebody's going to ask a pond question now. just, but it's all going to be legal and insurance. But you can stay in the background or you can go back to work. Same thing with Sean. Up to you guys. It's very rare, but somebody will probably ask one now, and I'll look bad, but it's fine.
Well, what if I had a question?
Oh, do you have a legal? This is a first.
I have a insurance question for Deb and Don. Do they look at the hazard level of the dams as, something that they would insure?
Go ahead, Deb.
So yes, insurance companies want to know if it's a class A, B, or C, and then they require additional information based on that classification.
Dawn, what is a class A, B, and C like? What does it mean?
Well, the hazard class is how dangerous it is to cause injury to others and property damage. So the lower the class is obviously the less likelihood to hurt others or cause damage. But once you have your dam as the certain classification, if you're not getting those inspections and you're not adhering to what those inspections say you have to do, you could have some serious implications from that legally. And I think Sean and Cole, you've seen where individuals are assigned to be in charge of that emergency action plan and doing what needs to be done in an emergency, and they've moved and nobody's updated the planning. That's scary.
Audience, yeah, you can ask pond questions if you have one. Somebody just sent, can I ask a pond question? By all means, go ahead. Cole, you know what I love? I've probably done 1,000 of these. No, I've done 500 with Sean and Dave and Deb and Dawn. No one has ever asked a question.
Well,
that was amazing.
Up the EAP, and it really struck my curiosity, I guess.
Okay, I'm going to do this. Sean, do you have a question for anyone on our panel?
I'm good for now. I've been listening the whole time, so I'm good for now.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Deb, do you have a question about anything?
Not that I can think of right now.
All right, Corey, Dave.
No questions.
No.
See, Cole. See what I'm going to have you on more. Honestly, Chris, do you have a question about anything?
General life thoughts, but no, not for this panel.
All right. Well, I can handle those. You can contact me later. Dawn, do you have a question?
I always have questions, and this is for the attorneys. We were talking about deductibles earlier. We were really talking a lot about deductibles relating to property insurance, but let's talk about those liability deductibles, because a lot of our insurance carriers are putting them on our general liability policies, our directors and officers policies. So when we have someone who's frequently asserting claims against the association, what about those deductible costs?
What is your what is the
Well, how do you assess them? So for example, Dave talked about assessing deductibles back to unit owners, responsible parties, assessing among the common. When we have liability claims, and we're definitely seeing a trend with deductibles, especially when we're into those maintenance type claims in a condo association. So that's going to be more prevalent in the future.
And what is the trend going to be, Dawn, just so the audience is following? Because some
you
people
have a deductible on your liability insurance. Some associations already do.
Are you telling me that there were no deductibles on that kind of policy before?
On commercial general liability, it's not, it's very uncommon to have a deductible unless you're in an excess and surplus market usually. And I think, Deb, that, most of all of our carriers in the standard market don't have a deductible, but our directors and officers liability claims, if you had an environmental impairment legal liability policy, there's retentions and deductibles that are associated with that. I have not seen any governing documents that have ever responded to how those costs would be assessed, especially if you've got somebody that keeps on suing or keeps on putting in repeated claims that causes you to have, to pay out. Okay.
Deb, there was a lot of, I'm going to go to the lawyers, but there was a lot of insurance in that question. Do you have anything to add to it or rephrase it, or there was a lot of stuff there? It's a great
No,
question.
I mean, I agree with Dawn because we are seeing these general liability deductibles be put on policies, especially for the slip and falls, right? Bodily injury. You're having too many slip and falls, so eventually you're going to end up in the excess and surplus lines market. There's going to be deductibles. And yeah, the governing documents, the bylaws don't address liability deductibles. Usually it's just the association has to absorb that and doesn't pass it along to the general community. But I like her question to the lawyers. Could they?
All right. So really quick, Sean and Chris, just in case you didn't hear what we were talking about earlier also. Dawn and Deb mentioned that a lot of associations also kind of like want to have a deductible so they can show the association that we're getting hit with these kind of claims and things like that. That's true, right, Deb? And Dawn, I didn't misrepresent you, right? There's an advantage to it, almost
For
like
for property claims, yes.
for property claims. There's like a political advantage to it theoretically, or an educational value to a certain
Well,
extent.
and sometimes you're forced to have that.
Okay. Was that accurate what I said, Deb and Dawn? Were you okay with that summarizing? That being said, Sean O'Connor, I'll start with you, and don't be afraid to rephrase the question and then give me an answer.
Yeah, so there's nothing specific in South Carolina law that dictates whether the association can pass through the deductible to the homeowners as an assessment, or if it just has to, absorb that, and then the homeowners, fund it through their regular assessments. I guess the key thing to understand is that the homeowners are paying either way. Like if there's not a deductible, or if there's a lower deductible, then the premiums are higher, and if there's a higher deductible, then the premiums are lower. But either way, the association, the members of the association are paying one way or the other. It's just kind of a business decision on the part of the board as to whether we want to, have a lower deductible and pay higher premiums, of which the members are ultimately absorbing that cost, or if we want to have a higher deductible, lower premiums, but then when we get hit with this deductible, then we pass that cost through as an assessment. But the homeowners are ultimately going to pay for it either way. It's just whether you pay now or pay later.
Thanks, Sean. Chris, commentary.
Yeah, I see for the hazard insurance, I see that in documents all the time where deductibles are passed through. For liability in North Carolina, there is a section of the Planned Community Act that talks about a common expense, which is what a deductible would be, that is caused by the negligence or misconduct of a lot owner. The association can assess it back to that lot owner. So I think one of the details was, well, we've got a lot owner that just continually sues for whatever reason. So I guess the question is that misconduct? Are they just exercising their legal rights in the system? I'd be interested to see how that works out. If somebody who is a chronic suer, as I like to call them, is litigation happy, and the association incurs a deductible and they just assess it and see if that owner challenges it. That'd be an interesting case. I'd try that just to see.
Dave.
Yeah, see, I think what we're talking about here, and I think Chris just tied it into the liability, to the personal liability cases. I think we're talking about, I think, is the which was good. What he did is the property claim, which is, you have insurance for I don't know, stupid overflowing toilet in a condominium, and there's a $5,000 deductible for it, and the insurance company pays out less than $5,000. Well, in that case, does the owner have to pay the $5,000, or does the association have to pay the $5,000? In New Jersey and some other states, there are statutes that allow the association to make it clear that the affected owner pays the shortfall, not based on fault, but just based on circumstance. An interesting question would be whether you could do the same thing with respect to a slip and fall. So if you have if a guy slips and falls in the clubhouse and files a lawsuit for a broken hip, there's a deductible, right? Some amount of money, a deductible. So the case settles, or there's some payout for him at some point, but it's short $5,000, $10,000, whatever the case may be. Does the association make that up? Is it applied to the owner that's affected by it, the bunch of owners that were at the particular event? that were affected by it. I've never seen it really done in relation to personal injury claims.
Well,
But I'm like Chris. I'll give it a whirl.
Hold on,
Dave,
Dawn.
I just wanted you to
Hold on,
interject real
Dawn.
quick.
Let me go to the other attorney. Okay, just to be fair. All right. So just give me a second, and then I'll bounce right back to you. I'm sorry, Dawn. Corey.
I think everyone pretty much nailed it on the head. The only thing I could add is if there is a situation, Ray, like you mentioned, where someone keeps suing the association all the time in their frivolous claims, then the association and its attorney needs to get aggressive and seek sanctions or damages for those frivolous claims.
Okay, Dawn.
I was going to say, I really liked where Dave was going with that, because on the property aspect, why it's confusing is that failure to maintain, right? So we get a lot of lawsuits that come in. People say, oh, that's a D&O claim. But we say, no, D&O doesn't cover bodily injury or property damage. So what's the claim? Well, the roof was leaking and the board didn't replace the roof, or they're going to, and they're just waiting. And now the interior is damaged, and now our homeowner is suing. And when they sue, it's going to be a general liability claim. That is happening more and more frequently, especially in our condominiums and our townhomes. So those carriers are starting to say, you know what? You're backdooring getting property coverage through the general liability policy. So we're going to start to assess or to put on the policy a deductible per claim for property damage. I don't think, Deb, we're not really seeing on the bodily injury. So that's why for the attorneys, I think we're going to see this, and it's just so common these days. How does the board really address it?
All right, Sean and Cole, you guys can jump off. We'll see you guys. I'm not going to make you stand by here the whole time. Thanks. There's no more pond questions. Deb, I don't want to get too detailed to the insurance where it gets like so confusing for everyone involved, but Deb, and then we'll bounce back around.
So yeah, I like where Dawn's going with this. Like she said, we're backdooring property coverage through a general liability policy. And that's eventually going to affect the cost of general liability insurance. So how do we think more proactively about that? And I think it's more of an attorney question, and that's why Dawn posed it.
Great. And then I have other questions from the audience. I want to be careful. Dawn, did you get your answers?
Yeah, and as you know, Chris pointed out, something that we're probably going to see occurring in the courts later on. You know, that's going to be something. How does that work out? And someone's going to test it out in court, because that's how our insurance reacts when we have court cases and precedent that says, okay, well, you thought you were going to do it that way, but now you're doing it this way because the judge said so.
You know, Dave, thanks, Dawn. 3 people asked different versions of this. Did you say that theoretically someone slips and falls at an I'm looking at the question, at an association property event, and there's a deductible of $5,000, that somehow the association goes back and establishes theoretically who was at fault at the party, and then go ahead, stop me then.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm just saying that there's statutory language in some states, including New Jersey, that allows shortfalls in insurance payouts, i.e. deductibles, that's what deductible is, to be collected from, or not, even if not collected, but basically not paid from the affected owner, having nothing to do with fault. So it rears its head more normally in the context of multi-owner property damage claims. Like I said, like in the high rise, when some idiot doesn't turn his faucet off and 6 units get damaged with water, there's an insurance claim. Fault has nothing to do with it because no one's actually, I mean, arguably, I guess someone's at fault for leaving I'll use a different example. A pipe just happens to friggin' burst for no reason, and 6 owners get damaged. There'll be a claim, and all owners will get payout, and there'll be a deductible. The deductible is a shortfall. People will be short, theoretically, money necessary to make repairs. In New Jersey, for instance, condominiums are generally allowed to pass that deductible along to the owners that are affected, whether they had fault or not. And it's up to them to have gotten their own individual insurance to help cover that particular nut. I'm wondering, my point before was whether or not that would be, the similar concept would be in relation to a personal injury claim, where, you know, you bring your mother-in-law to a party at the clubhouse and she slips and falls and files a personal injury suit, whether the deductible then could be passed along to the affected owner, which would be the owner that brought the mother-in-law to the clubhouse.
Okay, interesting. But it would have to be only that owner. Otherwise, if no one, then you would have to assess all the owners.
Right. It's different from
It's
like
one or
what
the
Sean
other.
was saying before about Sean was sort of highlighting, I think in a nice way, the absurdity of like trying to pass along the deductible to the owners. Either way, they pay it. They either pay it from a deductible for common expenses, or they pay it through, larger insurance costs. We're talking more of a targeted type of thing, which is the people that are directly affected by the actual claim share in the deductible, which is a shortfall in coverage. It's clearly legal in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania. So, I mean, these are things that happen all the time. I wonder how it would play out in personal injury claims when sometimes there's coverage for like medical expenses. There's different dynamic with personal injury claims, and I haven't yet seen it, but it's something that I think would be conceivable under the statutory language.
Chris, you had mentioned, I got like 2 responses to this. You had mentioned something about if there's maybe it wasn't you, but there was a chronic litigator that the owners could be assessed for those deductibles. Did you mention that, Chris? Was that you?
Yeah, I mentioned it.
Okay, here's the question.
Yeah.
Isn't that going to be a possible discrimination claim? Because theoretically, if they're asking like 2 people, I'm condensing in here. They're kind of asking like, are you going to have to do that all the time then? Or are you just going to do it for that one owner? Like, who's going to decide?
No, I think in going back, so the statute in North Carolina allows to assess something like that against someone who has committed misconduct. A serial litigator who has filed 5 lawsuits against the association in the last year or 2 years, I would seek court assistance. I would get something called a gatekeeper order, and then I would use that to then go back and potentially use that to assess whatever the deductibles are against that offending owner. I think that would give me some legal support for that. That would be novel. That's never been done as far as I know in North Carolina, and I don't know that I would want to make law on that, but it seemed like it would be fun if I did. So,
Dawn, I'm going to have you come back
to pay for it.
Yeah.
Dawn, I'm going to have you come back, and what we'll start doing is we'll have some deep dive sessions with like you guys and stuff like that. All right, let me get to some of the other questions here, and I have quite a few of them. I'm just going to go in the order that I see them and read them as I see them. I'll start with Deb on this. Does the association insurance cover potentially inundated propertied PIPs in case of a dam breach? Maybe explain the question, Deb, also.
Trying to understand the question. Okay, so a dam breach is gonna happen, and what happens when that so water comes out and damages personal property or buildings in the pathway of the body of water that the dam is holding back, in a sense. But that's gonna be it could be property that we are insuring because it's community owned property, or it could be property that we're not insuring. So that's where the difference is going to come in, because then you're going to have third-party liability for the damage done to property that we don't own or insure. So yes, when it comes to dams, it's a very complicated situation, and what Ray always hates when we say it depends on the situation and what happened and what got damaged.
I just kind of want to remind the panel too, like, there's people in the audience that are very familiar with these terms, and there's people in the audience that are not familiar with these terms at all. That's why I keep kind of bouncing back to some of the questions, because I try to do the live streams where it's hard, where we kind of incorporate both people and have them be able to follow along. Dawn, same question, but like if you have to rephrase the question so it's more understandable to people that may not understand these terms, sometimes I don't understand the question. So I'm with you, audience. Does the association insurance cover potentially inundated propertied PIP in case of a dam breach? Does PIP stand for potentially inundated properties? Dawn, can you explain the question?
Well, that's the first time I've heard it. In New Jersey, we call PIP for personal injury protection. So little different, but it's really going to depend upon the circumstances. It depends upon your insurance policy. But if you have, if you have a dam breach and then other businesses or other parties are going to sue saying that you're legally responsible because you were negligent in maintaining or didn't do what you were supposed to. I mean, it all also comes down to the court. There's a lot of times where we say, no, there's no way that that would be covered, or it shouldn't be covered, or it's specifically excluded. And a court decides that it's going to be covered and the insurance carrier must proceed. What's the best solution there? I think the best solution is having a really candid talk with your insurance broker. The dam breaching itself, you can't get insurance for dams. We don't physically insure dams unless they're, a structure typically. And then what is the cause of a dam failure? Flooding. And then we're also looking at earth movement. Those are two common exclusions. So it's going to be about community involvement too. Who's around? Are they aware of the risk? So for a board, it's just more of consulting with your, people like Sean and Cole, who have expertise in pond and lake management and water resources. And of course, attorneys about contracts maintaining, and then your insurance agent. Sit down with them and have that talk.
All right. So it was potentially inundated properties, not propertied. So I don't think that affects any of the answers. So
well, that's usually a flood. And so again, so it's going to depend. Like Deb was saying, sometimes people who are not we're not insuring them, they sue us because they have a loss.
All right. Any attorneys have any commentary on that? Okay. A lot of insurance questions. Alligator liability at ponds. This is all they asked me about. Actually, Deb, this is an interesting one, I realize, for a lot of different reasons, because you guys talk about like pests and vermin and things like that. So Deb, yeah, is the association covered if there is an alligator attack, or is that extra insurance they need to buy, or is that insurance that you can't get?
Up here in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, I don't really think about alligators.
Yeah. Well, okay. How about a bear? No, forget it. All right. Let me just go to Dawn because it doesn't relate.
All right. Well, in the Carolinas, if you have property damage from an animal, typically it's going to be covered. You mentioned vermin. Vermin damage, the mice getting in and eating electrical wires, typically not covered. If the animal bites someone, there is a lawsuit, and I want to say, Corey, it came out of Florida because everything comes out of Florida. But the lawsuit paid over $15 million for, it had to do with a pond, and it was I think it was a snake bite. And the woman opened up her sliding glass door to her condo, and the snake just jumped out and got her. And she had to have, very expensive anti-venom and all that. But at the end of the day, the judge said $15 million. Now, we look at that and say, well, how could the association be responsible for a wild animal?
Corey, I got a lot of questions to get through here, but I am going to go to you on this. The question was alligator liability at ponds. I'm just going to make it a simple question. An alligator, I know it's not going to be a simple answer. An alligator bites someone on the pond. The insurance is, it depends, right, Dawn? Can't hear you.
For the most part, most insurance policies are going to respond. They are absolutely going to start defending you, and they're most likely going to indemnify you too.
All right. Corey, wrap this one up for me in any way.
Yeah, I mean, generally, the only time there's really going to be liability for the association is if they breached a duty or they were negligent in something. Wildlife is everywhere, especially in Florida. Is the association, is there a known alligator that's a nuisance alligator? Are people feeding the alligator, which is illegal, to draw them in? But generally speaking, unless there's a duty, and the association is negligent in that duty, I would say there's probably not liability, but you never know.
Sean, I noticed that you jumped back in.
Yeah, absolutely. There are signs that you could get making aware that reptiles are in the area for the public. These are common throughout the Southeast. And they're often you could get these templates from your wildlife officers in the state. It's a definite active program to make aware and let people know of those possible hazards.
So Sean, I mean, it's obvious, right? If the board knows that there's an issue and residents report that there's a 20-foot alligator in the pond that has been like threatening people, then maybe the board has a problem. If it's just an average alligator that pops out of nowhere, right? Sean, can you run with it from there? If I'm close.
Yeah, I mean, Corey was right on the money.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to demonstrate that there's some notice and a breach of a duty or some negligent conduct, some failure to do what a reasonable board in that position would have been expected to do. And if, like as you mentioned in the kind of fact variation that you said, if it's just a surprise, if it's not unforeseen, or I'm sorry, if it's not foreseen, if it's not preventable, then whoever is bringing that lawsuit is going to have an uphill battle to try to win that and get an award of damages. Anybody can sue anybody for anything, but that doesn't sound like a good case to me. So I'd have to read up more to know about what happened with that situation with the snake and the big verdict or the big settlement.
Don't get me back to the snake because I got to move on. But Dawn, I do want to wrap this up with one more question. So let's say there was it was a nuisance alligator and the board was aware of it. Is the defense still covered? And if they're found guilty and the association of fault, is the judgment covered?
So most of the times, yes, but if they're, it's hard to say that they're extremely negligent because it is a wild animal. And an insurance policy, when they're looking at, they have a duty to defend, and if warranted, legally responsible to also provide that, judgment costs too. So I don't know, just try and stay out of the alligator business would be my recommendation. Yeah. Leave that to Sean and to Cole.
This one is a legit, it depends, right? So I guess.
I don't know why I'm so afraid of them.
Nice.
Corey, it really looked like it was real there for a second.
All right. If a declaration states, here's another, it's a long one. All right, I'll start with you, Deb. If a declaration states 100% replaceable flood coverage, but FEMA only covers $250,000 per unit, does the HOA meet the requirement with maximum FEMA flood policy, or must the HOA supplement with an additional private coverage by HOA group policy or by individual homeowner policy? So once again, Deb, if you understand the question, rephrase it so the audience understands it, and then provide the answer.
So what I hear you saying is that their governing documents, so their bylaws or their declaration, is stipulating the amount of flood insurance that the association is required to purchase. So they must be in a flood zone.
100% replacement flood coverage, and FEMA only covers $250,000 per unit.
Right. So the National Flood Insurance Program only covers the $250,000 per unit. And then there are what's called excess markets to buy excess coverage over that. Because generally $250,000 per unit is not going to be enough coverage to insure to full replacement value. So you would have to then buy excess coverage over that if that is one of the requirements. It also could be a requirement for, let's say, a bank that they don't accept just the $250 per unit. But then I have seen in other cases where, because that is what the National Flood Insurance Program provides, that is acceptable. So it all depends on the situation and who's requiring it and why.
Wow, we got a lot of people, Dawn, that know a lot about insurance today. All right, commentary from you, Dawn.
With flood insurance, I want to really highlight, I mentioned earlier about getting insurance appraisals. New Jersey requires it, Florida requires it, South Carolina and North Carolina, nope. So when we're talking about those things, flood, different animal, what's going to happen? The building's going to wash away. So what do we have to be concerned about? The foundation, the footings. Those are typically not included in an insurance policy. In fact, a lot of the governing documents will say that the board has to purchase an insurance policy exclusive of the foundation and footings. So what does that mean? When you're getting your appraisal, please make sure that they separate out the flood exclusions and inclusions. that is going to change the value of your property, and it can be substantial.
Okay. How should a shareholder, by the way, audience, if I don't get to your question today, I'm going to send it to the appropriate panelists and see if we can get you some answers, or I'll do it as a short video and put it online. How should a shareholder make this risk scenario clear to a board for waiting to make a repair? Does anyone on the panel know what this would refer to? Because I've lost my train of thought on this one. How should a shareholder make this risk scenario clear to a board for waiting to make a repair? If not, this person could send back the question and rephrase. Okay, send me back that question.
I think I know what they're getting at. I think they're saying, what's the risk when someone delays in reporting or cleaning up something or fixing something that was damaged? I think that's what they're getting at.
Here's what they said. Here's what they said. In relation to a repair that the board is aware of, but is not fixed, but interior damage is occurring. Does that help you, Dawn?
Yes, and that's where I thought they were going. Now, from an insurance perspective, and legal is certainly going to have some input here, but the continuing or progressive injury or damage is often excluded on an insurance policy. And also pre-existing conditions, wear and tear. So if that was something that they knew about and they didn't fix, there's a huge potential for them to have no coverage at all.
Deb, I think I understand the question. Maybe you could rephrase it. Can we make it simpler also before you give the answer?
So I guess what they're saying is damage continues to happen because something wasn't fixed timely.
People like scenarios, and I like them. So the roof has been leaking. Is this work? The roof has been leaking, and it's causing damage inside someone's unit. Is that a scenario?
That's what it sounds like. Yes, that there's
Okay.
a maintenance item that's happening where the roof is leaking. The board's aware of it, but they haven't fixed the problem. And every other day here in the Northeast, we're having storms, and the roof just keeps leaking, causing more interior damage. So that's going to be slow and continuous over time, and not going to be covered by insurance. And we're going to say it's a maintenance issue. So there definitely could be some situations where people are going to be very unhappy. There's no insurance and repairs are taking too long. That's when it's going to turn over to a legal situation.
Okay, and I guess the question here, Dave, starting with you, how should a shareholder make this risk scenario clear to a board for waiting to make a repair? I would say, like, what process should my question would be, what process should a board expect to take place in regard to this kind of situation? Just run with it, Dave. But
I mean, if an association is put on notice of some sort of condition that's causing damage, it has an obligation to investigate it, determine if it has any responsibility for it, and if it does, cure the condition that's causing the damage, and then maybe it has some obligation to compensate the person for the damage, but that's not always clear. Owners seem to believe they're always responsible, that they're always entitled to reimbursement for damage that occurs from leaks and things, but it's not really the case at all, that they're often, in my view, entitled to reimbursement. It would depend on fault, when the association knew of the condition, how long it waited to correct the condition, and things like that. There's no, what lawyers call, there's no strict liability, in my view, for damage caused by an association problem, like a leak or a sidewalk crack or something. It would depend on negligence and fault.
all right, so panel, what I'd like to do is go to Sean and Chris, because they got on late and they took the time out of the day for the last two questions. And if we have time for closing thoughts, we'll do it. Sean, I'll throw this one at you, and just keep an eye on our time. Who is responsible for ensuring that an emergency action plans are valid? Who is responsible to ensuring that emergency action plans are valid? Sean, and then I'll go to Chris.
I mean, that's a board responsibility. We've done live streams on that particular topic by itself. You know, it's a best practice for an association to have an emergency action plan. And while it's not mandated by state law, it certainly it's an industry standard. And if there is some loss or liability that occurs where the post-incident investigation indicates that this could have been preventable or could have been mitigated more effectively had the association, taken the time and effort to do that and consulted with the appropriate experts and develop a plan like that, then that could, amount to a claim against the association for not having one or not following it.
Okay. Chris, I'm going to give you the last question. If, by the way, any attorneys that have to jump in our insurance, you can right after this question. Chris, we have a cemented area that used to be a road from the developer. We have closed off the road because the cement is crumbling. At this time, the HOA is getting pushback from homeowners wanting to use the area for parking. The board says no because of liability. Is the board obligated to allow parking in this area?
Oh, you give me the tough one. Okay. So the answer to that is it depends on, which is the famous answer. But look, if it's common area, which it most likely is, unless there's something in the documents that I don't know, every owner has a right to use common areas subject to the rules and regulations of the association. And that's generally in every set of documents and certainly in state statute in North Carolina. If the board of directors has a reasonable basis to say, look, we're not allowing anybody up there, we can't afford to fix it right now, and if we allow you up there, we're going to be opening the association up to liability, and that's our rule, that's probably enforceable. However, I would fall back to this position too. If something that is the association's responsibility that needs repairing, the association needs to take every step possible to determine if it can repair it, raise the appropriate money if possible. Because that unrepaired area sitting there in perpetuity is just not a good idea. It's just going to, at some point, somebody's going to sue over it.
I was thinking the same thing, but we don't have time to dive deeper into it. The board, we could talk about why the board has to repair it, whether or not they have to. Okay, let's go to closing thoughts, and I will do a session for everyone that loves insurance, and then we'll just do I'm serious. I will do it because there was a lot of deep insurance dives today. Sean, I'm sorry that we didn't move fast enough, but Sean, really quick, we really like 10, 20 seconds. If you don't have anything, you don't have anything. And always consult your professionals. I'm taking that away. Always do that, Sean.
Yeah. So circling back to a couple of questions ago, just be cognizant that there is a duty to mitigate on the part of every insured. So in a lot of these claims that were asked about, possible that both the homeowner and the association are insureds. And if they are sustaining damage because of a loss, they can't wait around for someone else to repair it or for the coverage decision to be made. You got to fix it yourself to stop the damage and then deal with the insurance claim or what have you. But you can't sit around and watch damage occur and expect to recover for it. The law doesn't allow that.
Corey, we're out of time, but closing thoughts.
No thoughts. Thank you for having me this week, and we'll see everyone next week.
Well, you can't make it like that because then people start leaving all of a sudden. You can't close. I didn't say you could close the whole program. All right, Chris, do you have anything closing thoughts? And then we are going to close it because I think Deb and there's a lot of questions for everybody else. But go ahead.
I'm going to piggyback on something David said earlier. Just because something that is the association's responsibility to repair leaks, for example, like a roof, does not mean that the association is responsible for the interior damage. I see those questions all the time. There's no strict liability. They still got to prove negligence. Thanks.
Oh my gosh, we got to do that as another topic. All right, Deb, Dawn, or Dave, do you have anything that you absolutely have to tell anyone?
Well, since Chris took my point, I will say I'll take Chris's point.
Okay. Can I close the program now, Dave, or is there more to be?
Yes.
All right. I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm so sorry I rushed everybody. And thanks everybody for being here. And I'll backtrack on some of these and we'll make them other sessions. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. See you guys.
Bye.